We all think we know the story of the Age of Discovery, right? Columbus, new trade routes, the rise of Europe. But what if I told you that entire story has a massive piece missing? What if the real reason for those famous voyages wasn't even in Europe, but was actually an Islamic superpower that basically forced Europe's hand? We're about to dig into a hidden history that connects a small town on the US-Mexico border to the most powerful empire on Earth in the 15th century.
It all kicks off with this really weird puzzle. Right there on the border between Texas and Mexico, there's a town called Matamoros. And that name is, well, it's totally out of place. I mean, think about it. Why would a town in North America be named Moor Killer? Were there Moors in Mexico? The answer to that question, believe it or not, changes a huge chunk of history we all thought we knew.
So that name, Matamoros, it's like this echo from a very, very old war. It's straight up Spanish. Mata means to kill, and Moros, or Moors, was the term Christian Spain used for Muslims. For hundreds of years, Catholic soldiers fought to kick Muslim rule out of Spain. So, to be a Matamoros, a Moor killer, was this incredible title of honor. It was baked into their identity.
And here's where it gets wild. It turns out one of the most famous Moor killers of them all was a guy you've definitely heard of, Christopher Columbus. Yeah, long before he ever sailed west, he was a soldier, and he was deep in Spain's holy war against Islam. And that violent religious identity, he didn't just leave it at the dock.
Okay, but to really get Columbus, you have to understand the world he lived in. And the world of the late 1400s was not at all what our history books told us. We need to just set aside that whole story of a confident, rising Europe and take a hard look at who the real superpower of the time was.
Let's just get one thing straight, right off the bat. This whole idea that the rise of the West kicked off around 1500, it's a total myth. It's a story we wrote centuries later, looking backwards. In reality, Europe at this point was, well, it wasn't the center of the world, not by a long shot.
I mean, the contrast is just staggering. On one hand, you've got the Ottoman Empire, without a doubt the most powerful state on the planet. They had the biggest army, the most land since ancient Rome, and they controlled all the key trade routes. And then there's Christian Europe. It was kind of a mess, just a bunch of small, weaker kingdoms that were always fighting each other, losing ground, and were gripped by what historians actually call a doomsday mentality as they watched the Ottomans just keep expanding.
And check this out. This quote really nails it. If you were a betting person back then, you would have put all your money on the Ottomans, or maybe China, to run the future. The idea that some backwater kingdom in Western Europe would one day dominate the globe, you would have been laughed out of the room.
So all this Ottoman power, it created this huge crisis for Europe. The empire had basically built a giant economic wall, cutting them off from the rest of the world.
The Ottomans controlled all the roads, and I don't just mean the Silk Road on land, but all the sea lanes in the Mediterranean too. All the spices, all the silks, all the treasures from the east, everything had to go through them. They were the ultimate gatekeepers. They controlled the supply, and you better believe they set the prices.
And this right here just shows you what a stranglehold they had. Something like 85% of all the good stuff from the east flowed through Ottoman territory. For places like Spain and Portugal, way out on the western edge of Europe, this was a total disaster. They were stuck paying insane prices and had no way to get to the source of all that wealth. They were completely cornered, economically and politically.
So this was the million-dollar question for every king and queen in Europe. If you can't go east through the Ottoman wall, what do? What's your next move? How do you find a new path to Asia's riches? It was in this exact climate of total desperation that a religious fanatic with a really radical idea showed up.
And this brings us to Columbus's real mission. See, he's gone down in history as this great explorer, or maybe a savvy merchant. But the evidence, well, it paints a very, very different picture. He was, first and foremost, a crusader.
So here's the absolute key to understanding him. His voyage wasn't really about finding a new way to get spices. His main driver, the thing that got him out of bed in the morning, was religious zealotry. He saw his mission as the next great chapter in that long holy war against Islam.
And his life story totally backs this up. I mean, just look at the guy's resume. He's fighting Muslims in Tunis as a young man. Then he's working out of an island right on the Ottoman Empire's doorstep. Then he's right there as a soldier at the final victory over the Moors in Granada. His entire life was shaped by this conflict. Sailing west wasn't some new career path, it was just the next logical step in his personal crusade. And boy, did he have a plan.
This wasn't just sail west and see what happens. No. It was this grand, three-part military strategy. First, find a backdoor to Asia to sneak around the Ottomans. Second, find those mythical cities of gold to pay for a massive new army. Third, link up with the Great Khan of China, who he mistakenly thought might be a Christian ally. And the ultimate goal, the grand prize? Launch a massive two-front pincer attack on the Islamic world and take back Jerusalem for Christendom.
And here's the thing. This crusading mindset wasn't something he just left behind in Europe. He basically packed it in his luggage and exported it directly to the Americas. It became the literal blueprint for conquest. The conquistadors who came after him, they saw themselves as exactly that, matamoros, more killers. In their heads, the indigenous people of the Americas were just another group of non-believers who were in the way of God's work. They used the same brutal tactics and the same religious justifications that they had used against Muslims back in Spain.
So here it is, the unseen chain of events. First, the long conflict with Islam forges this crusading identity in Europe. Then, the powerful Ottoman Empire creates a crisis by blocking them from the east. That desperation then fuels Columbus's religious quest to sail west. And finally, that more killer worldview gets exported to the Americas, with absolutely devastating consequences.
You know, when you put all these pieces together, it just forces you to completely rethink this huge pivotal moment in history. The main character in the story of America's discovery, well, it might not be who we thought it was at all.
And here's the biggest takeaway from all of this. The Ottoman Empire wasn't just some bystander in this story. It was the active catalyst. Its power is what created the desperation and the religious fire in Europe that made Columbus's crazy plan seem like their only shot. Without that massive Ottoman shadow hanging over them, there is no age of discovery as we know it. The world would look totally different.
And that brings us right back to where we started. The name of a town on the US-Mexico border is a direct echo of this whole forgotten history. And it really makes you wonder, right? In what other ways are we still living in the shadow of this empire? How many other parts of our modern lives were shaped by a superpower most of us know almost nothing about?